SEO Conspiracies with Mr. Dixon Jones and myself.
Hello, Laurent Borelli.
Yeah, nobody can say my name actually in English the proper
I said
way.
it wrong all this time.
Well, you gotta think, okay, it's like Laurent, like Yves Saint Laurent, but think of it as low rent, like you pay cheap rent. Low rent.
Low rent, okay.
But I don't know why you can't say Laurent. I think it's just a French way of having the air circulating in the mouth, or I don't know.
Sorry, so you're saying that when I go Laurent, it's completely wrong?
Laurent. It's the R part, Laurent.
It sounds the same to me. I can't hear the difference.
Try to say Yves Saint Laurent.
Yeah, Yves Saint Laurent. I'd still say it the same way.
It always puzzled me, but whatever. Back in college, they used to call me Frenchie. That was easier.
Okay. My business partner is Fred Laurent, so I should probably get my business partner saying it right.
But Laurent is fine. I'm used to it.
JavaScript.
Yeah, that's a big one, because that's one of those things that it's a big topic right now. There's some stuff said by Google, and what's your take on it?
Well, so it's true. Google never used to read JavaScript, and they started many years ago, many certainly back in Matt Cutts' time, but it took them quite a long time to understand how to read JavaScript. So the problem for JavaScript, but now they're very good at it, and it's worth taking the time to understand how they're good at it, because they have done some things slightly in a slightly strange way to be able to get good at understanding JavaScript. And if you understand it, you can make your pages faster. You can make your indexing better as well. And the person you need to follow, for anyone out there, is Martin Splitz. He's the JavaScript ambassador. He's based in Geneva. And I went to Switzerland to a Google Webmaster conference back in November last year, and he was talking about this and how a sort of JavaScript under the cover, and it was a pretty good presentation. He's got lots of things on the web about it. But the interesting thing is that in order for JavaScript to be read, it needs to be read as if it was a browser. So it's not the raw HTML. The raw HTML then has to be interpreted by a web browser to be able to create what's called the DOM. And the DOM is then where all the JavaScript and stuff lies. So the challenge for a computer like Google is that it's very quick to just take the source code and process that. It's very difficult to then process the source code, and it may take potentially minutes, because some sites are so bad at loading if they were trying to run all the JavaScript. And taking something from a fraction, very, very small fraction of a second to do, and then something that could take a minute to do, is a huge disparity and won't scale. So the problem for JavaScript is a scaling problem for Google. So what they did is they've got this thing called a WSC, a Web Service Controller, I think it's called. I don't know what it kind of stands for, but so they'll take the raw code, and then they'll have a look at the bits of the code and the DOM and try and recreate the DOM so that they can see what JavaScript bits are being called. And then they try and work out whether they need to process that JavaScript again, or whether they already know about it and therefore they don't need to process it again. So the funny thing about, and then what they'll do is they'll create the DOM, and then the DOM goes back into their index crawler again with the DOM all done. So they don't recrawl the website, but they do some stuff to reanalyze that source code so that they can then pass it through their crawling interpreter before it goes off into the ranking systems. So, but the interesting thing is there that they may have cached one part of the content, but not another part of the content. So it's not so easy for them to say when they last looked at the content, because the JavaScript file for this may have been, something that's been around for months and they don't need to do anything new to it. Whereas this one here, the checksum's different and they know it's a different thing. And so the challenge is for us as SEOs is to understand how we tell Google when some JavaScript content has changed, if they need it to be redone, they need to try and change the file size or put some kind of file name checksum on there so that Google knows that it's different and it needs to be looked at again. And also not to give Google not to write JavaScript in a way where you have to load the whole of that JavaScript for the page to properly load, because Google's not going to want to carry on taking running a JavaScript file somewhere around if it can avoid it. And I might have got some of that wrong, but the point is that they can read a lot of the JavaScript now, and it's made a huge difference to the way in which they understand content on a web page, I think.
It's definitely one thing that's different. What I said 2 years ago is not the same that what I said today. A couple of years ago, I could see sometimes Google interpreting the page like the browser side, but from my understanding and calling a couple of PhD friends, what they were saying is within Google, they were testing it. So they had some free bandwidth. Mm-hmm. Because to render through the browser is very expensive. It's not free. So back then they were only doing it in case of a website that was hacked, for example, to be sure that. But it wasn't done for ranking purposes. Mm-hmm. And of course, Google wants to read JavaScript because Google wants to read everything. But my question is...
Except Flash.
Yeah, and I followed what Martin said. Where my disagreement is, and they did the same. Remember Flash? When they say, we read Flash. But I'm still waiting for a website in Flash to rank.
No, I think they've finally admitted that they can't be asked to do Flash. They've given up on that one. I think I heard that quite recently, actually.
and I'm still waiting for... Like you said, if the JavaScript is properly tagged and everything is done to be accessible for Google, yeah, maybe it comes up. And we see, for example, like Twitter. Twitter is, and it's even more difficult with Ajax, I think. So obviously, Google can read Twitter and can bring up Twitter in the search result pages. But is it as powerful as far from an SEO perspective as a good HTML website? That's where I think the balance lies, where you could...
I think it is. I think it is now. I think that Google expects a good website to have JavaScript on it. And maybe not huge amounts, but but well-written JavaScript, I think it would expect to be on huge amounts of sites. So as long as you do a reasonably good job. So JSON LD is JavaScript. So one interesting thing is if you use the structured data testing tool to have a look at whether your structured data is properly configured. That's a Google tool. Interesting, that tool doesn't read JavaScript, which is kind of weird because Google definitely does. So and I was actually on again, Martin Spitz was writing some documentation the other day, and he invited people in from the public to go online to help him write the documentation. And I said, but you've got this tool here, but JavaScript, but it's not reading the JavaScript, so you can't use the tool to test JavaScript implementations such as inlinks, which is my motivation for saying that, because we use JavaScript. And he said, blimey, I haven't written this in the documentation. Absolutely. So we went back and changed it and said, you can't use that, use rich snippets testing or whatever. So Google does understand the JavaScript, and it actually understands it very, very quickly now, within minutes, I think, or most of it, but it doesn't do it within all of its tools. It does it in its main index and testing things, but not, for example, in the Google structured data testing tool.
That's a very interesting topic because it's evolving from maybe 2-3 years ago to until today. Google got better and much better. So our final tip would be, look into it. Make JavaScript readable, but it's definitely not the enemy of SEO because JavaScript is wonderful. You can make beautiful things with JavaScript.
Yeah.
The danger is it could be, like you said, very heavy on the resources.
Yeah, and I think so one of the problems that we have on InLinks is that a lot of our content is JavaScript driven and all using the same URL. Now Google can't index multiple versions of the same URL, and because it can't deliver you to a point within that process. So that's bad design on our part, But I think that a lot of JavaScript will cause that kind of problem. If you're not paying attention as a JavaScript writer, you will write content that is going to be badly indexed.
And on the other hand, it could be. I have an example with a client in the car business, and he calls up one day. He's like, "Okay, I don't know what happened, but we dropped. Are we penalized? Right? We got a Google penalty. Check the website, look at the source code, and there was nothing because they redid the website in React.js.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
There was no more content because they didn't make it accessible for Google. So it could be it's the best case of self negative SEO.
It becomes a real problem for us as SEOs because it's SEOs are not generally programmers. If we were programmers, we'd go and program stuff. We are that interface between the market and the technology, and but we can't. It's very hard for an SEO to know all of these technologies inside out. All we can know is, we can see when Google's unable to read various bits and pieces, but we don't necessarily know immediately how to fix that. React.js is a pretty specific stuff, and there are plenty of SEOs that know it very well, but maybe they're not so cool at at page speed or Java or geolocation or Ahreflang or something else. There's so many different parts of SEO now that the danger for the SEO specialists is that they're saying you've done this wrong without being able to say how to do it right.
I think you should be able to say I'm wrong or to say I don't know. You got to be able to say, okay, I'm gonna check with someone, right? Bring up someone who knows. I think it's a skill, a very good skill to be able to be humble enough to say I don't. I mean, there's so much we need to know. How can you be?
You make a very good point there, Laurent. I think. And having your own network of friends that you can call on, you can trust, and they can call on you is a very important part. It's another part of the networking, isn't it? So, yes, we kind of made network to try and build up a brand or to do business or whatever. But I think the network of people around you that can help you when you run into an area that you're not confident in. It's great to be able to go back to a client and say, okay, I've looked at this. I don't know about this, but I had a chat with Bill Slawski, and he said there was a patent back in 1422 that did this or whatever. Those kind of things are very, very helpful, and that's possibly why one of the reasons why the SEO community is so much more collaborative than many other industries. I think if you try and keep it all a secret to yourself, well, you're also going to people aren't going to share their ideas so well with you or be around when you kind of want to ask them for something. So the people that seem to be getting further are the ones that are giving as well as taking.
Exactly. It's a whole, like, I saw a TED talk. I mean, it was within the company, but I think we can translate it to the population. He was saying there was 1/4 of the profiles who were takers. They just take and they don't give. 1/4 was givers. They give without asking anything back. And half of the people were matchmaking. I give you, you give me. Negotiation. So, yeah, if you, in the SEO community, if you bring in something, it's wonderful. Whatever it is, it could be the little tool, it could be organizing an event, it could be
a sense of humor. Yeah, there's so many different things. Yeah.
But people are very welcoming, and you'll be part of the whole, and it's gonna go back and forth if you learn a little bit to give without asking anything in return. And if you don't expect anything in return, you're always gonna have good surprises anyway.
So going back to JavaScript, I think one thing that we should all really pay attention to, if we're going to be using JavaScript, is to have a good look at page speed and stuff. And I think that I'm sure we'll talk about page speed on a different session, but JavaScript can affect page speed, and page speed can affect SEO. So I think that's one thing that if you're going to be using JavaScript, you've got to really pay attention to. And you are using JavaScript because, you know, if you've got Google Analytics on your site, you're using JavaScript. Third-party JavaScript that's probably breaking GDPR laws. But anyway, you know.
For the final word on that topic, also what I'm advising some clients, this is taking over, this device. And I have some clients who have over 90% of the traffic coming from this device. I mean, this device or the tablet, whatever. So instead of making a desktop website responsive to mobile, I'm saying, okay, let's build a website for this. Yeah. That would also work on the desktop, because you were talking about speed on this is even, and I'm not talking about Googlebot, I'm talking about the user.
Yeah.
People don't wait for 2 seconds on this thing.
No, they don't. They don't. It's very true. But of course, the phones are perfectly happy to run their JavaScript on there. So
no Flash, but JavaScript works. Okay, let's move on for next time. We gotta answer the question: can I rank one page for several different keywords?
Okay,
Au
I'll
revoir.
think about that.